Unyaka u-1958 eGoli, eSophia Town, idolobha lawo. Phela le ndawo le indawo yesisebenzi, abaculi, yinkabi nabafunde kakhulu.
Town is a particular time in this country where music, politics, poetry, politicians, and Nelson Mandela was coming in out of there, and there's so many great stories that were happening in that little pocket of South Africa that always sounded and felt unique.
In the 1980s, I made a documentary about Sophia Town. And a criticism of the documentary was that we had romanticized what was in fact quite a squalid and violent ghetto. And so 30 years later, thinking about doing this feature film, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to look at the good and the bad of Sophia Town.
We just finished making The Road, and we had this incredible set of locations, sets, wardrobe, props, all from the 50s, from the Sophia Town era. And so I put out an email to all my director colleagues at BOM saying, has anybody got an idea for a project that we could shoot before we pull these sets down? Angus very quickly responded saying, yes, he'd like to do a piece set in Sophia Town that plays out over one night.
It's 1958. The Nationalist Party has started to show its muscle, and it has started moving black people out of the cities. And Sophia Town is their first target. Badman is an intelligent, powerful, enigmatic figure. He might have been a liberation leader, but circumstance has pushed him towards being not a liberation leader, but a gangster. He lives in his father's house, and tomorrow he will be moved out of it and it will be demolished. And so he decides, I'm going to make a stand. They're not moving me out. And he understands that that might well mean his death.
He was black in this time, and a black man couldn't make much of his life, so he becomes a gangster. In his mind, he's protecting his people.
He had a kind of an imagination of creating a Robin Hood kind of gang. We will steal from the whites in the city, we will protect our community. But the truth is, his gang are doing their own thing, and they are a menace to the community.
On this night, he really just wants to dismantle the gang. He's tired of the violence, he's tired of everything that they perpetuate. But then, through fate, he meets the girl that he's always loved, and things suddenly change. You're not going anywhere.
And so this night, which will be the last one of his life, he finds the woman of his dreams in his company, and they spend these hours together.
I didn't know that gangsters made tea.
For me, it's the story of that moment where you meet somebody and suddenly you feel like you've got this huge connection. And it's a tragedy because it happens when neither of them can act upon it.
What was important to me was that the love story could stand with the darkness and the peace and hold its place, and that you believed in that love story.
Ladies and gentlemen, Eve Msomi!
Even Somi is this gorgeous singer, sassy, smart, but she knows that to survive in Sophia Town, the best thing is to be at the side of the toughest man.
She is a black woman, a strong, independent black woman, but her era obviously limits her empowerment. And women were still expected to hide your emotions and hide your views because you didn't obviously want to overstep your boundaries with men. And back then, as a woman, rolling solo wasn't a real thing, you know?
What do you want with me?
I think that Moneo just, I don't know, she felt this role, and I think maybe she felt it because it is also true to her. As a young singer today, the expectations on her all the time to be a certain way, I think that she probably was able to draw from that in a contemporary space and imagine what it would have been like in the 50s.
I didn't really think about Eve as a musician. Whenever I played like the role of the singer, I just thought about myself. It was literally me being Manoa. She's a lot like me in many ways, except I don't feel like I need a man to survive.
Whenever a draft was released, Angus would send it to me and then he would be like, this is where we are, what do you think? So we had so much fun in the creation of the character.
I think of myself as a collaborator. So I'm at my happiest when I'm surrounded by great talent and I can provide some kind of base for them to perform on.
The work is elevated because there's so many layers to it. And on set, there's a freedom to take a scene and make it fresh. And it is wonderful to see that story grow and transform with more ideas and more layers and more people getting involved.
Ghost is the villain. I think he was driven mostly by the hunger for power, and he saw a bad man finding himself in a bit of a vulnerable position, and yeah, he was just trying to use whatever opportunities he could to try and climb up as high as he can. There's a specific rhythm and a type of movement that comes from Sophia Town, that quick, and it's also got those, like, I don't know, like in the dance moves, you go like this, and then you quickly change direction. So the gangsters also had quite a bit of that, where they'd be doing one thing going this way and then all of a sudden it switches and goes this way, where somebody's trying to speak to you and then they're robbing you, or somebody's trying to be nice to a girl and then they're taking her to take advantage.
The film for me is about unfulfilled potential, and I feel like that there are a lot of young people who can empathize with that feeling of not being able to escape their circumstances.
Ngathi ndiprendeka Batman. Wawari ngoBatman. Ghost uyambulala namhlanje.
So you can't separate Sophia Town from music. If one thinks of any of the great 50s music, the Manhattan Brothers, Dolly Ratebe, Miriam Makeba, one thinks of Sophia Town. And so I wanted the film to be full of that music, and happily it is. And then there is a glorious score which Philip Miller has made, and I am deeply grateful that he made something so beautiful. And the kind of cherry on the top was I wanted a song for the end credits, and Sjava and Questa, for the first time, collaborated. And they did this fabulous song, which is both 1950s Kwela and contemporary hip-hop, which I suppose is kind of what the sensibility of the film is.
Every shot for me is just beautiful. Sometimes I switch the audio off, I'm not really watching the story, I just look at those beautiful images.
This was special because we just wanted to do something that we're passionate about. It was such a rich and interesting time in our country. It almost felt like a Western in a way. Like Westerns always feels like a time period everybody wants to go and visit. And I felt like this time, the 1950s in Sophia Town, was that type of era.
Sophia Town in those days was quite broken down. It was a poor community, but there was richness in terms of the textures. And then once you put that together with ambience and glitz and glamour of fashion, that gives you an overall visualization of that era. And so in the back of my mind, my motivation was that, let's say if I have a Don Matera or a Huma Sekela watch it, I want them to watch it and be able to identify with it and to be able to come to me and go, thank you very much for capturing that time.
It's like a roller coaster of emotions, and I guess that's what everybody wants essentially when watching something. You know, you want something that's really going to entertain you, and that's exactly what you're going to get from this movie.
I think the primary thing for a movie is just to get into somebody's mind and just rock their world and take them on an amazing journey.
I think whether you're in China or in England or wherever you are in the world, I think that you can come into this movie and really get a taste of something you might not have seen. Now you're seeing it in color.